Well, good morning. It is the assigned time for the special meeting of the MAPS 3 Citizens Advisory Board. Amanda, it appears to me that we have a quorum. Do you agree? The presence of a quorum being confirmed, we will call the meeting to order. And let me begin, before I call on David, by saying that some of us have been at a meeting of the Modern Streetcar Transit Subcommittee. And I want to congratulate you, Nathaniel and Zane, and the members of the subcommittee who are with us on a very thoughtful and intense and thorough examination of proposed course of action. I thought the questions were outstanding, and it was clear that there's been given much thought to basically where we go from here in the consideration of the resolution that's before us. So I really appreciate the effort and time that you all have put in so far. And with that, I'll turn the meeting to David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 2 is recommend resolution authorizing negotiation of contract with Brookville Equipment Corporation for the MAPS 3 Modern Streetcar Vehicles Project M3-S005. Pardon me. You may recall that I believe it was in January we had a resolution that would authorize us to negotiate with Inacon, and we put together a contract with the help of Amanda with our legal staff, and we've been working on that really hard to negotiate that and all the particulars within that. And then last month, I believe it was, the contract came before you, and it was approved with conditions precedent to the contract, meaning that there were some items that they had to turn in order to make that contract valid. Inacon signed it, they agreed to it, and they had 30 days to provide those documents. Specifically, I believe it was insurance and letter of credit. The 30 days came and went, and we did not receive those documents. So what we brought to you today is a resolution authorizing us to negotiate the contract with what is essentially the second place proposer for the streetcars. There was a spirited discussion in the subcommittee this morning. I think it was a good discussion. There was a lot of questions, a lot of points brought out, but ultimately the subcommittee voted unanimously to approve this resolution.
Are there questions? Anything you
want to add? I'll wait for questions just to see what people are interested to hear about, but I can also maybe summarize some of the comments from the subcommittee as well, so others can benefit from some of those questions.
Of course, this makes sense, Nathaniel, but can you tell us a little bit about the history of, is it Brookville? I forget the name of it. In terms of getting things done on time, and secondly, what this does to your budget and what you're going to deal with that?
So, am I good? As far as delivering streetcars on time, I recall we learned this morning that they were maybe 6 months late in Dallas, but it was all attributable to a protest that Inacon put forth. And it was also explained to me that since Dallas was using federal funds, that there was a protest mechanism. In this case, since we're not using federal funds, there is no protest. There's not a mechanism like that in place. Anybody can file a lawsuit. As Amanda would point out, anybody can file a lawsuit. But as far as being meritorious, that's another issue. There were also delays, I want to say, for Detroit, for example, they actually were going to work with Inacon. Detroit, in fact, when we were deliberating over who to select last December, at the time, my recollection is that Detroit was going to go with Inacon. But then at some point this year, they actually had the exact same situation that we did, where they decided they couldn't come to terms on the letter of credit and the bond. And so just like we're talking about doing, Detroit switched to Brookville. So my understanding is that any of the delays that Brookville has experienced in delivering vehicles in the U.S. have been related to a protest or a legal issue. I don't believe that there's been any, certainly not significant, just performance and capacity issues that I'm aware of. Now, I should also point out, it's important to point out that one of the reasons that Brookville wasn't our very first choice last year is because most of their track record, most of their history is renovating more traditional streetcar vehicles, building other industrial vehicles, not, at the time, not so much building so-called modern streetcars like we're doing. And that was kind of a knock against them. Well, a lot's changed that last year, and so now they actually do have experience building modern streetcars for U.S. cities. And so that's an important point to make as well, to understand their background.
Let me add to that it's not as if it's a one-for-one exchange from Brickfield to the other manufacturer. I think that came out very clearly in the subcommittee meeting. There are still some technical issues and the differences that need to be looked at by our contractor, A&E. So it's not just, no, we're all good. There's some weight differences. We have to look at the battery life to see about offline and then wear. So there are other things that need to be considered. It'll probably come up in comments from.
And you asked about the cost. I forgot to answer that part. So the vehicles themselves total $1.5 million more. Now we were still under budget for the phase one as far as the vehicles, and still working on actually having a design for the track and having a proper estimate. But we're still within budget on phase one, and it's even with the 1.5. Now it's still, obviously it's not ideal to have to spend a little bit more money because there were some alternates and some other things that you like to have some more buffer room on, but that's just a trade-off. And then that's the vehicle part. And Zane mentioned that it is heavier, and so there might be a little bit more cost on bridges, on slabs, battery wear and tear because it's just a heavier vehicle. So we were, it's still pending some more analysis from the consultants, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a significant, it weighs about 5% more. And so we still need to investigate that to understand the all-in extra cost. But that's what I can speak to now.
Michael?
You were addressing some technical issues, but I assume they met the required specifications that we put out there. So I mean,
They did.
They do qualify from that standpoint, right?
They did. They were the number 2 selection when we did the source selection.
Other questions? Amanda, I want to give you a chance to make any comments you might. I know you've been handling legal. I'm not asking any particular question. Is there anything that you'd want to add to what the explanation that David and Nathaniel and Zane have made?
I don't have anything to add. If there are any specific questions, I'm available to answer.
Thank you. Other questions? Shall we act?
So as I would move that we consider and approve this resolution to authorize negotiation of a contract with Brookville.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution authorizing the negotiation of the contract with Brookville Equipment Corporation for the modern streetcar vehicles. Is there further discussion? Bob.
I just wanted to add, I haven't seen the contract that we had with Enacon, nor have I seen the letter that I understand was sent to the city, but my lawyer's antenna went up when you read about this, Mr. Crumb's article in the paper a couple of days ago. It certainly caught my eye and attention. But I've had a chance to share some legal talk with the city legal staff, and I'm fully satisfied the way the contract was written and in the context that we're talking about. We have, if there's any such thing in the law, an absolute defense to any claim that Enacon would have. As I think Nathaniel said, the courthouse door is open, and obviously in a situation like this, we all have some concern about what action Enacon might take if we switch at this point. None of us wants additional delay on the project, and it's a risk, I think, that we ought to be willing to undertake. We can't keep them from trying to take some kind of legal action if they choose to do so, and I have obviously no insight into whether they would or not. But if they do, I think we can deal with that. I'm comfortable with the position from a legal perspective that we would take in this situation, and so I've become convinced we ought to make the switch and approve the resolution.
Thank you, Bob. That's very helpful, and I'll just say there was a very thoughtful discussion of those issues in the subcommittee meeting, and I would just say that I concur with what Bob said about that. And any other questions or comments? Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That the resolution is adopted. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda for today, comments by the board. Any other comments? All right. David, anything from staff?
I'd just like to thank Amanda Carpenter for all her hard work and the legal staff, because the bulk of the work on this was the contract and all the legal issues on that, and she worked tirelessly on that, so I appreciate it.
And above and beyond that, she made a very lucid and compelling presentation to the subcommittee that I think gives us all comfort about where we're going, as in this whole process, and from convention center to park to sidewalks, there are always going to be a few bumps on a project or a group of projects that are going to be more than a decade in the doing. And so I think we just need to be resilient, and ultimately we're going to achieve our goals. So I really appreciate that, and I want to say thank you too for all of you for coming. And I want to offer a chance if there are citizens here who want to make a comment. Jeff?
I just wanted, my name is Jeff Bezdek, 1015 North Broadway, Suite 120, and I serve on your transit streetcar subcommittee. I just wanted to say that we've had a very thorough process. One thing that gives us some degree of confidence in this particular vendor is that they have operating streetcars in Dallas. So we have something to refer to that's literally 3-4 hours down the road, so we can actually go see the vehicles. They're very similar, if not identical, very close to being identical to the vehicles that we're procuring. I also wanted to say that with the convention center location being finalized, we understand that that's a curveball, and one thing that was discussed at the subcommittee meeting today is our dedication to making sure that the streetcar system properly responds to this relocation. Because between the convention center and the park, that's over half of the MAPS project, and our decision and the route alignment was based on the sites that we were thought to be the location, and now that that's moved, I think the majority of the subcommittee believes that a proper connection is warranted. And if that takes a little bit of additional time, one of our initial goals is to try to get the streetcar system built before potentially a next MAPS vote. Since that is probably not going to happen due to these unforeseen delays, we would rather take the time necessary to get the route alignment correct, and that is going to take some coordination with ODOT and the Santa Fe Station project potentially. But in the next few months, the subcommittee is dedicated to making this the best streetcar system that this city's ever seen since the first one was built over 60 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else? Hearing none, then shall we adjourn? Someone will move that? Been moved and seconded. We adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you for coming on short notice. Appreciate it.